This goes along with the vaccine mandate stuff that you're hearing, and there's a similarity in this belief system, and we keep hearing this from Fox, that this is about governmental control, getting you to wear a mask. It's not about trying to save you from a contagious disease that's out there. It's about training you like a dog to behave whenever the government says jump, you say how high. And it's working like a charm, apparently, in the red districts. But let's, oh God. Tucker explains Democrats' thirst for total control over citizens. By the way, this is the from the party that said women shouldn't be able to control their bodies when they're pregnant, and gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married.
Welcome back to a special edition of Tucker Carlson tonight. Now, defund the police, which was the battle cry of the left.
Yeah, but not.
Has borne fruit. Has
all right.
Destroyed cities across the country.
They never did it, though. They never actually did it.
Thousands of people have died because of it as the crime rate spiked.
Well, I think they died because bullets went through their body.
But the neighborhoods of the people who called for defunding the police are exempt. They have private security, lots of private security. We know this for a fact.
Well, no, in Minneapolis 3rd District, where the George Floyd killing happened, is in many ways the springboard for where that conversation started. It really did. I mean, it was local to that area. Lots of people. I mean, there wasn't private security around the areas where rioting and looting was taking place, which you decry all the time.
Federal filings show that Sandy Cortez, for example, a big defund the police, has spent...
See, now, he's picking he chose a freeze frame that makes her look psychotic. This is if it wasn't also true that they pick shots of Trump that make him look bloated and like he just washed up on a beach after dying of a Cheeto overdose and throwing himself off a bridge, you would think they were making a point with this picture, but it might just be the graphics department as a eye per sight.
Thousands of dollars this year on personal bodyguards for herself.
Well, that's because your viewers specifically have threatened her life.
Including ex-Blackwater contractors. Everything is Animal Farm now.
What? Oh, this is the, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, and because she has to get security because right-wingers are threatening her life, that means she lives a privileged life instead of what a nightmare to have to hire security because the death threats are so real.
But that's nothing compared to the bill that Cori Bush of Missouri has wrapped up. In less than 3 months this year, Cori Bush spent nearly $70,000 in campaign funds for her own personal police force.
For her own personal police force. I would go her own personal bodyguards because the fuckos you're friends with want her dead.
And at the same time, she was surrounded by armed bodyguards that donors were paying for. She was calling...
Well, yeah, it's a little hard. No matter how much your donors like the work you're doing, it's a little hard to do it if you're dead.
For you to lose your police protection. Now, she was asked on Wednesday how exactly this works. And as you watch this tape, imagine the reaction of the Chinese in Beijing as they watch this.
They didn't watch this.
Jaws open thinking, this is who runs the United States?
Well, they're not stupid. They don't know she doesn't. They know she doesn't run the United States. She's a single congressperson. They just know that the citizenry runs the United States, and that's something you're against too. So maybe I don't know. Call them.
We're in good shape, ladies and gentlemen. Cori Bush.
I'm going to make sure I have security because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend $10 more on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets because we're trying to save lives.
I'm going to make sure I have security, so suck it up and defund the police, your police.
And according to Tucker Carlson, this is the entire policy of the Democratic Party, of Joe Biden, of everybody.
Just look at that poll. Let's say you're from a foreign country and you saw that, you would think to yourself, whatever political party she's aligned with should have no power. That's too crazy.
Well, for the record, Tucker, for example, in in Hungary, it's easy to make sure they have no power. And in China, it's also easy to make sure they have no power. See, the nice thing, in deference to you, about our country is that even whack jobs like you can have a say.
It's too stupid. It's too reckless. By the way, all the billionaires who are funding the DAs who've made our country far safer.
Here comes George Soros. Do you think he'll do a name drop, or we're just supposed to assume it's Super Jew?
They're the ones more dangerous, rather. They're the ones who are letting murderers out of jail in places like LA and New York and Chicago and Philadelphia. They don't care if you die, they never did. But Cori Bush just made it explicit. She really doesn't care. So the country is more politically polarized than it's ever been,
largely because of people like me.
Largely because of so-called leaders like the ones you just saw. The people in charge.
Well, no, largely because of the media personalities who drive the conversation, like yourself.
In charge of our country don't seem that interested about the lives of American citizens. They just want to be more powerful.
Oh, is that why? When Democrats are for something that the Republicans propose, it goes to the floor, they actually vote for it, and depending on what their constituents want. But when the Republicans actually have either there's a Democratic or a bipartisan bill that's put forward, they'll hide from it rather than vote for it, because even though 60% of their supporters, oh God.
You wonder, how long can a system like this go on? Michael Anton has thought a lot about that question. He's a former speechwriter, a former national security official in the last administration, and he said,
okay, so he started out as a speechwriter, and as a propagandist, essentially, he was given a national security position by the former guy.
Sat down for us with a long and fascinating conversation.
We'll be the judge of that.
On Tucker Carlson tonight on Fox Nation. Here's part of it.
Oh yeah, hold on, we forgot that Tucker's with us on this. Is he here? Where is it? Yeah.
I like wood.
There we go. So.
In the competing two models, the blue state model versus the red state model, it seems to me
the blue states pay for the red states.
There's a real serious will on the part of the blue side to rule the reds.
Yes.
And the reds both have no desire, from what I know, to rule the blues, but they really also don't want to be ruled by the blues.
Yeah, but it's weird that they still need the blue money to stay alive.
The red states are kind of the Ottoman Empire. You can kind of practice your own weird sectarian religion if you want, unmolested.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ottoman Empire, that worked out well.
And the blue states are like the Soviet Empire. Like, you have to read the catechism or else you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Well, clearly not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what catechism is Joe Manchin reading?
That's a problem. And if these
it is a problem, mainly because it's false, but other reasons.
two governance models, as the thesis of the book kind of has it, are the
I see. So he's selling a book that's the difference between the two.
contending for the future of the United States. They're not contending on equal terms.
No, they're not.
That is to say, they're not saying,
No, that's true. They are not. He's right. They aren't contending on equal terms. Like the blue states have all the money and pay for all the shit, and the red states spend all the money and are full of shit. So there is a difference.
one of us is going to win and one of us is going to lose. Because I think that the red model is, if you would just back off and let us live the way we want to live,
You would starve.
Wow.
everything would be fine. I mean,
No, you wouldn't. Your roads wouldn't line up with the other states. You'd have freeways that were off by 10 feet. Leave us alone.
great
Oh,
example.
you mean like Texas in a winter storm.
To me, it's hugely important, is energy, right? There's almost no issue on which Texas and California differ more greatly. Leave aside the cultural issues for a second,
Yes.
but on a real public policy question, right? Texas has a thriving oil and gas sector. It's one of the most, the strongest in the union, probably.
It's the biggest, and it has the most dead land. It's got the most dead land. They're not drilling where there's trees. It's desert.
I think for sure. And
They're not fucking up scenery in Texas with oil wells. The oil wells are the scenery.
Texas, as a public policy question from the governor's office on down, is all in for this because they think it's good for the state, it's good for local companies, it's good for business.
It's good for 7-year-olds who freeze to death in cars.
It's good for workers, right?
It's good for Ted Cruz's Cancun trips.
We're all in on this. California sees itself, I'm sure other states too, but California, as a green energy pioneer, but there's no, in the California mindset, there's no possibility of peaceful coexistence because in their view, Texas's view is California, develop all the wind and solar you want, great. If it works out, we're rooting for you. We're going to do our own thing. California mindset is Texas, as long as you are drilling oil and pulling gas up out of the ground and burning hydrocarbons, you're killing us all, and we must force you to stop.
No, you're not a country. This isn't the fucking UN. This is the United States of America. We all deal with this.
They won't. It's hard to see what the basis of compromise on those two.
Here's the basis of compromise. A lot of Texas voters in Austin and Dallas, where in the places where there's actually a lot of fucking people who aren't rich from oil or aren't linked up to BP, Chevron, Exxon, any of these companies, or quite frankly aren't Chinese investors in Dallas who've moved in over the last decade, are 100% fine with solar taking off. Texas would be a great area for that. And not just panels, liquid salt reactors, all that stuff. Molten salt reactors. And this line that he's drawing, considering this blue state, red state nonsense that he's talking about, is ridiculous. There's oil drilling in California. There's offshore oil drilling in California. There's just more land to ruin in California. There's more worthwhile land to do other shit with in California, except Stockton.
On that issue is.
Yes.
Whereas, like I say, Texas is willing to compromise.
Theirs is.
No, they're not. Because the compromise goes their way 100%. Their compromise is, you do that and we'll keep drilling. That's not a compromise.
Evangelical faith.
Yeah.
And it's almost like 8th century Islamic, actually. What happens if we don't do this?
I think the polarization will get worse and worse and worse. And, I think public opinion could eventually come to a breaking point. I mean, I guess you'd have to say there's two possibilities. One is the red parts of the country they give up and they say, all right, we're never going to get out from under and there's nothing we can do.
Because of it, as the crime rate spikes.
Whoops.
But the neighbor.
Whatever they want to do. The other possibility is you could see some kind of, a real revolt. That is to say, if people make, over time, repeated good faith efforts to resolve this question politically at the ballot box, if through compromise, and are just told over and over and over again, no, you could see a backlash that could take a number.
When the fuck is Texas told over and over and over again no about oil production? You're talking about public lands or native lands. Here's a good idea. Stomp your feet, stick your fucking thumb in your mouth, and be an adult.
Number of forms. I think the reason why we should start talking about this is because that backlash will not be good.
It's a threat. This is a threat. I mean, it's a veiled threat. It's a tough guy threat from Texas. If you wait, if they decide they've had enough, you're gonna be seeing some Bundy-style long guns pointing on the streets of San Francisco.
Michael Anton, that conversation went on for nearly an hour.
And yet nothing was said.
It's all on a brand new episode of Tucker Carlson Today on Fox Nation.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether they're new or old. It's not going to do anything.
Nation.com, and well worth it, we think.
Well, you would. I mean, you wouldn't have made it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Really? That's it? Christ, what a bailout. Tucker explains Democrats' thirst for total control over citizens. That was the name of that video. Did he explain it? Do you feel it was explained? Tucker wants you to think is that there's a division in this country between the crowd that wants to be more inclusive of people especially who have traditionally not been included, and those people want to take that inclusion and shove it down your throat because you don't want to be inclusive, and that's your right as an Ottoman Empire redneck. And that if at some point we don't quit shoving that inclusion down their throat. It might just be that they have to rise up and shoot all of us. That's the big. That's the explanation for the thirst for Democrats' total control. Because eventually we have to take the guns away, I suppose, so that when they get tired of including everyone, they won't have anything to rise up with. I have to say that, like, in the mix that's out there right now of political discourse, one of the problems that Fox has, and one of the problems that Ben Shapiro has, and a bunch of other people have, and I would argue that a couple on the the fringy left probably have a similar problem, probably have a similar issue with their ratings during this time, is that as things normalize, as things get healthier, as people start reconsidering their their entrenched positions, or survive some of their entrenchment battles and go, you know what, I'm okay. I'm not that mad anymore, or I'm not carrying that with me. Or, we can find ways to agree to disagree, but still allow for people to live and let live, right? Which would, in theory, be what the libertarian world is supposedly about. And there's, room for them to, they're allowed to be dicks, but they don't vote for anybody that's going to shut down the rights of another human being, right? That's the kind of trade-off there. And as that grows, and it's increasing, what you need from the, what the Tucker Carlsons and the Jimmy Dores of the world and those folks have to do is drive that division higher and higher, because it's failing. You know what I mean? They need a revolutionary blue pill, something they can gnaw on, little blue pill, of course, that they can gnaw on, that brings back their old-fashioned revolutionary virility that was so tasty and so easily monetized during the Trump years. So, whereas the rest of us have shit we can go back to. I like, with this show, I feel like a bit like George Washington in that regard, which is like, he went back to being a farmer after he was done with politics. I always feel like, I'm not going to stop the show, don't worry. But as I'm doing this, if it ever got to the point where I was like, I didn't need to fight about this stuff, I could fight about something else and have some fun. But they don't. There is no world in which the Tucker Carlsons have a book club or do something else. There's no world where Sean Hannity or anybody of the other folks at Fox can't live where there isn't this hyper division. There are news reporters, and I would argue that Rachel Maddow is one of them, that can report on things that are not necessarily the end of the world, but are crucial to life and improving things for as many people as possible. And all along, you need that constant gardening, especially when it comes to the politics of human beings in the United States. And it's a daily work, right? That's why we've had the news. Which is why you have the news, throughout history, to keep you aware and to keep you aware of the details where you might be able to make changes to better it, in that mitigatory world, the middle way of democracy that is successful. But the fringies desperately need this fight to be awful all the time. And you can usually spot them by how much they're saying the other side wants to control what you think. The fear language. Because as much as I'll, take the piss out of our my colleagues across the aisle, as it were, I still always leave room for their humanity in these arguments. Not even if it may be in a situation where that person is just never going to redeem themselves and be a worthwhile citizen, but somebody that listens to them, who overhears the way I talk to them or to them, may adapt a little bit better. That doesn't mean you can't have nice little flame wars on Twitter and whatnot. But ultimately, when it all boils down, we're still humans talking to humans. And these are still arguments, as opposed to, battles. These are opponents, not adversaries, not enemies. And that's got to be crucial.